perspective. We have two main philosophical currents, two main philosophical ideas. The first one, which is mentioned in the book as well, structuralism, which says the circumstances where an individual is born or placed are determinant for their future. In contrast, we have individualism, which states that each individual has the capacity through its own decisions and values to create their future. In other words, structuralism, where you are born, the situations, the circumstances will determine your future. You don't have any degree of freedom to decide upon your future. And individualism, you have 100% to create your own future. Your decisions, your values, your thoughts, your intentions actually can make you determine what your future is going to be. So we have these two ends, structuralism, individualism. Perspective lies almost in the middle point, but going more into individualism. And systems theory goes on the other way. We're going to focus in perspective for this class, okay? I just want to point out that system theory goes for structuralism. So perspective, we are going to analyze the combination of both structuralism and individualism. Let's start with the French school. So the French school arose right after the ending of the World War II, which was around, I think it ended, yes, in 1945. So right after, the French school began to think about different ways, not to analyze the future, but to make the future. They were reconstructed in country. They were just right after a war, which if I recall, they won because Germany was the one who lost. So that's the way they started to think about the future, to construct the future. Is this school related to structuralism or individualism? Which of these two? With the things I have just told you. Oscar, is that a question or a participation?
Individual.
Okay, Suzette said it, individualism. Why?
Because as you mentioned, you said that after World War II, they wanted to create a new future. So that's the concept of individualism, where you have the freedom to create your...
That's it, Suzette, you're right. So this school, it's behind individualism, or takes individualism as their first statement or their philosophy. They wanted to construct their future. If they wanted to construct their future, it's obvious that they had in mind that they had the capability or capacity to change or shape their future. We have two big French schools. The first one, because there were two different waves or two different stages of French perspective schools. They were divided or separated around 10 years. So right after World War II, Gaston Berger started actually funded this perspective school, where they stated that if you want to create a future, you have to rely on actions in the present. So the future, in other words, was actionable. 10 years after, around 10 years after, Bertrand de Jouvenel said that, yes, but more important, if you have, the word in Spanish is voluntarismo, willingness, yes. So he said, instead of action, is more about willingness. Remember, if you read the book, you can take actions to shape your future, but also your intentions shape the future. And Bertrand de Jouvenel focused on the intentions, on your willingness to shape your future. Sorry, I made a mistake. These two were from the first wave. This second one was from the second wave of the French school. And if these two were talking about perspective, Michel Godet was talking about a strategic perspective. So how can you use perspective analysis to do strategic plans, which translate into strategic actions? And we're going to see a lot Michel Godet because he was the one who refined these ideas and actually made different tools for us to not analyze the future, well, analyze the future, but from the point of view of shaping it, okay? So Michel Godet was the most outstanding philosopher in the French school. Let's go to the Anglo-Saxon or English school. English school because Americans and English philosophers were the ones who were pioneers in this school. However, it is more accurately to say Anglo-Saxon because Germany was also involved in this school. So popularly you will say English. I just want to point it out that a more correctly way to say it is Anglo-Saxon school. Or in Spanish, Anglosajona. Okay, so in this case we have two universities, Sussex and Manchester. And what they said, this school was based in structuralism. So instead of trying to look for actions to shape the future, they were looking for tools and to question the future to predict it. So the future was already structured. They wanted to know what the future was going to be like. So French school, they wanted to learn tools and actions and ideas to shape the future. And in this case, is to predict the future because in structuralism, the future was already made. And this gets me to the point of the perfect rationality. So this is different from the concept of limited rationality, which was on the book. Does someone remember what limited rationality is? That wants to tell us? Limited rationality. So I want to give it a try.
I understood that it was like the thinking that an individual is like capable of doing, but limited to the circumstances and the context that is situated, something like that.
Yeah, well, limited to the knowledge he has. You can take decisions based on the knowledge you have, right? That's what this phrase makes a lot of sense to me. Information is power. So the more you know, the more your possibilities of choosing what you want to choose are, right? So that's why I think that if you are really well informed or the society is well informed, they have the power to decide what they want to do in terms of choosing their major or choosing their president and so on. So we have to understand that each of us has a limited rationality. We cannot have a 360-degree view, right? If you sit in a park talking to your friend, the tree that's there, the person that's passing by or crossing through the crossing walk, the kids that are playing in the playground, they exist to you in your 180-degree view, right? But what's behind you doesn't exist to you unless you move your head behind you. So there's this paradox in philosophy. If a tree that is in a place where no one can see it or hear it, and if it falls, does it exist? Does it make any noise or not? I don't know if you understand this paradox. If a tree that is somewhere in a remote place from any human species or even animal, and if the tree falls, does it make sounds? Does it even exist? The same goes here. Your limited rationality just takes in account what exists for you. That's your reality. But remember, you don't have the absolute perspective of the reality. You just have the reality that is for you. That's why we have to understand that society works as different gearing, and each gear is a person. So the more you understand that your rationality, your limited rationality, can be complemented with other people, the more you will be able to take advantage or to take advantage of these social interactions. On the other hand, the perfect rationality is based on structuralism. It says that the way we think, the way we think, our ideas are so structured that they are predictable. It's the opposite. Well, it's not the opposite of from limited, but it's different. So it says everyone has a perfect rationality. Therefore, we can predict the future because the human being is not going to think in another way that is not rational. That's not 100% true, right? People are unpredictable. So, yeah, it has a little bit of sense or a part of sense because they say we all think rationally, therefore we are predictable, but not as much, right? And the principle of freedom. So each individual always possesses a minimum of freedom. And actually, this recalls me to a book. Have you read in English? I don't recall the translation, but in Spanish, El hombre en busca de sentido. Have you heard about that book? Viktor Franklin?
No.
Some of you?
Man search for meaning. No, English.
I think that's the translation. Have you read it? I don't know
Yeah.
who said that.
It's really good.
Can you tell us a little bit of what this book talks about?
It's a book about Viktor Frankl. He talks about himself or his life. He was a psychologist who was taken. He was also a Jew in World War II. So you can imagine he was taken into a concentration camp, and he kind of talks about what he lived and how he survived. But it's really interesting because he talks about it from a perspective of psychology and a professional. So it's different than other memoirs.
That's it. And his chances to survive were almost zero, right? Impossible. However, he did survive. And what he states in this book is that the ultimate thing any human being has is their freedom. And actually, if you go to the first articles from our constitution, the Mexican Constitution, the first one states that everything that is stated in our constitution it's an obligation for any Mexican. And what do you think is the second article right after it? Do you know your Mexican Constitution, the second article? The first one says everything that is stated here must be complied. The second one, an idea, Google it if you want to. It talks about freedom. So, slavery is abolished in Mexico. And it makes sense, right? The ultimate thing any human being has is their freedom. And if your freedom is taken away, it's kind of a huge deal, okay? Of course, we have, well, I don't want to say of course, but in reality, we do have some kind of slavery, not as in the 20s or 30s, but still, the learning from Franklin's book is that as long as you are free to decide, in the case of Viktor Franklin, led him to survive this camp where he was a slave, actually. Okay, so going with this sentence, the individual always possesses a minimum of freedom and always relies on it to combat the system. And let's put this sentence into workplace context. So companies have hierarchies. So when you go on your first job is in an entry level, you will have your boss, right? Or your leader. Your leader has power on you because of hierarchy, okay? Or hierarchy, I think that's the pronunciation. However, that doesn't mean you don't have freedom to choose. And actually, if you don't have, that's repression. So this interaction between you as an entry-level employee and your boss or leader, it's more of a transaction, right? So as long as you have freedom on your decision, no matter the power maybe I have on you as your professor, I always says it's a transaction, it's a negotiation. What do you guys as a student need? What do you guys as a student want? What do you guys as a student pursue? And why, what or do I as a professor pursue? One, look for you and look for me, and therefore we can negotiate. It's not me having or taking advantage of my power on you. Because the principle of freedom, wherever, has to be always present, okay? And that's it for my presentation. Any questions on this? Does this relate on the different concepts you learn in the book? I have one question, a good question. Did you find the book easy to read?
Sometimes.
Honestly?
In the other, like the chapter 1, it was confusing to me.
Okay.
For a while.
Okay, let me give you an introduction to the perspective book, Guillermo Gándara. So, Tec de Monterrey has this government school. If you are in Monterrey area, it's just right next to EGADE. EGADE is the red building and the yellow building. That's the government school. And they had this program called Master in Strategic Perspective. One of the most influential professors in this master is Guillermo Gándara. And he wrote this book based, as you read on chapter 1, based on the different investigations or research he has done with his students and other professors to serve as a guide to the master students. However, this book was taken as it is to college students, meaning you. So that's why sometimes or most of it is based on language that is supposed to be easy for master reading. Well, if I read it, I understand everything because I have learned about philosophy, about pedagogy, and so on. But for you, that's different. So what I'm going to be trying for this first period is to take down all these different concepts from the book, from the articles, from all the different tools that the school is giving me for you to understand it. Okay? So whenever you don't understand one concept, let me know, because getting into philosophy is not as easy, okay? And we're going to give it really philosophical. And social too, because if we are basing our study of the future in perspective, which relies on structuralism and individualism, we have to understand how us as individuals take decisions or have intentions, right? So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was kind of stressing or you were struggling or challenging for you, but I just want to let you know that my work here is for you to understand these concepts, okay? So I want to share with you this. We're going to go on a 30-minute break, but it's more a break to read, okay? So if you go to Microsoft Teams, to Files, Class Materials, Cases, Caso Walk, okay? Let me give you an introduction to this case. So I think this case is not that old. Well, 2012. But it talks about overfishing. This is going to be our context too, a more specific context if we compare it to our documentary, the Seaspiracy documentary. And Wok is a restaurant that is based in Colombia. The case is based in Bogota, and it also mentions Medellin sometimes. But they talk about this restaurant and how they started to begin with sustainable fishing or sustainable restaurants or sustainable eating. And as you recall in the Seaspiracy documentary, there might not be something as sustainable fishing, right? The narrator or the guy who made this documentary talks about sustainable fishing with a lot of instances, governments, organizations, non-profitable organizations, experts. None of them could really state that fishing is sustainable, okay? In this case, you will learn more about how they treat fishing as a sustainable process, and you might have some hope that fishing can be sustainable, okay? So let's take a 30-minute break, or less, and let's come back at 8 so we can work on this and talk about this, okay? So I'll be here. If you want to stay in the session, that's fine. You want to just close the Zoom session and focus on reading, that's fine. But I want you to be here at 8, okay? Any questions? I'll be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Profe, ¿dónde puedo encontrar el documento para leerlo?
Yes, Sophia, you can find it in Microsoft Teams Files tab in Cases folder, and it's called Caso Walk. Okay.
Could you send it to me in the chat because I can't open my Teams. I don't know why it's not working.
Okay, let me look for it. Wait 2 or 3 minutes because I don't have it at hand.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
I can send it.
Oh, thank you, Mariana.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to the session. I didn't expect for you to go through the whole case in meticulously, so I just want for you to have an overview of this case. And before we go to that case, I just went to my little library and got this book, which is the El Hombre en Busca de Sentido. If you want to read it, do so. It's not that long, okay? And it's easy reading. So before we go to the analysis of this case, please put your team number before your nickname so I can do the breakout rooms easier once we are working in teams. So what's the purpose of this case? What are we trying to solve in this case? What are we trying to solve in this case?
How sustainable is a restaurant?
Nope. Another idea? What are we trying to solve here? I'm going to start asking like randomly if there are not any volunteers. I don't usually do this, but there are two parts where you can find the purpose of the case. Where? In the case. First paragraph